Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching 7th and final part of What If Naruko Was Blessed by Lady of the Lake. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
After 1 month, Arturia yelled, "Ah ha 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 ha," as she held her stomach because she was laughing so hard it hurt. Naruko yelled, "Arturia senpai, stop laughing at me, Mo," as she slapped the saber with her weak fists in a funny way. "I'm sorry, but this is just too funny not to laugh at," she said as she started laughing again. Naruko was sad and had her arms crossed. It had been a month since her so-called movie career started to go wrong. She and Henge had used the cage bunshin to its fullest extent, which caused her eyes to turn green and her whiskers to fall out. She had also made almost all of the extras and stand-ins. She also had to use more than 35 cameras and clones to do all of her scenes so she could go back to Konoha. Damn old woman, and she even had Anbu stop her from coming back so she could make about 12 million ryo from the movie's profits. The director said that it would be even more popular than the Funheim saga. Anyway, she got out of there faster than the Yondaime's Hiraishin no Jutsu and got to sleep in her own bed for the first time. The next day, she went to the lake to tell Nimue and Saber what happened. It turned out to be her biggest mistake. It's never good when Arturia laughs. Even though it was a pretty laugh, it was aimed at her, so it wasn't good. Nimue didn't help by calling her soon all the time. She wasn't a tsundere. Not at all. Naruko yelled, "I'm leaving," as she stomped away from the lake in a fit of not tsundere rage. Compound of the Senju clan. Naruko came into the compound in a rage and slammed the door shut. "Wow, little Miss Movie Star is mad, no soy low fat milk latte yet?" Karen asked with a smile. Karen was sitting in the living room and using some simple runes to work on a project she was working on.
Naruko's eye twitched, and she asked, not begged, "Don't start, please don't start."
She was a knight, and knights don't ask for things. Karen laughed a little and teased, "You should be happy. Just think of all the love letters you'll get when the movie comes out. You'll never let me forget this, will you?" The blonde asked Naruko as she sat down and put her face on the table. Karen just shook her head and said, "Nope." Then she went back to what she was doing. The blonde said, "Ba-chan will pay for this, maybe not now, but she will, oh she will." Karen asked with a smile, "Should I report you for treason?" "Bite me," the blonde said back. "Haku-chan, tea, please." Naruko yelled, and she heard a yes. Haku bowed as she gave the blonde the drink and said, "Your tea, Naruko-sama." Naruko said, "Thank you," as she took a sip. "Ah, that's good," she muttered, and took another sip. Haku tilted her head and asked, "What are you going to do today, Naruko-sama?" The blonde hummed, "I'll probably go on a mission or do some training. I can't do much else until that Jiraiya-sensei comes back to train me, the jerk." She said the last part to herself because the man still hadn't shown up in Konoha. Seriously. The man said he would train her, but she couldn't find him anywhere. He has so much nerve. The blonde asked, "How is your training going, Haku-chan?" Naruko made sure to ask for some of the Haiten jutsu that the Yuki Nin used on Haku before she left Haru no Kuni. She would be able to use it much better than they could because she could make her own snow and ice, while the Yuki Nin had to use snow and ice that was already there. "Great. Thanks for asking, Naruko-sama. My training with Tsunade-sensei is also going great," Haku said in her usual soft voice. Naruko drank some more tea and said, "That's nice." When the bell rang, Haku went to the front gate to see who was there. Shikamaru came in a short time later. He sighed and said, "We're in a pickle." Office of the Hokage. Tsunade sat in front of the desk with her fingers interlaced in front of her mouth. "Uchiha Sasuke left Konoha last night and went to Otogakure no Sado," the older blonde told Naruko and Shikamaru. "He's probably going to see Orochimaru." Shikamaru was shocked and asked, "Wait, what? Why would Sasuke go to someone as evil as Orochimaru?" Simple. Orochimaru wants the Sharingan, and Uchiha wants power, which Orochimaru promised Uchiha, Naruko said. "Right," Tsunade said with a nod. "This will be your first mission as a Chunin Shikamaru. Naruko will come with you to help, as I'm sure Sasuke has Orochimaru's men guarding him. Shikamaru said, oh, that's a problem. If that's the case, I'll have to ask for some Jonin and other Chunin for this mission. He was sure Naruko would be a great addition to the team, but the more, the better. Tsunade looked down and said, I can't do what you want. What? Shikamaru said. I'm sure you both know that most of our Jonin are out on missions and that we only have a few left to defend us, Tsunade said. Naruko said, I'm sure I can get Haku-chan. We'll need a doctor for this mission, and Ten-chan would be helpful, too. That's already 4 Chunin on our side, but Haku-chan and I are a bit higher level. Tsunade nodded and said, I agree. Also, find any skilled genin you can and tell them they have 3 minutes to leave the village. Hokage-sama, permission to kill? Naruko asked suddenly. Shikamaru said to Naruko, whoa, I know you don't like Sasuke and all, but we're supposed to bring him back. He shivered a little at how emotionless she sounded. No, she's right. If Uchiha Sasuke doesn't come back willingly, it would be best to kill him and destroy his body to keep Orochimaru from getting the Sharingan. You have permission to kill, but try to bring him back alive so we can punish him for his crime of treason against Konoha. Tsunade said in a serious tone. Because of how serious the situation was, Shikamaru felt a drop of sweat roll down the back of his neck. The stress is so high that you could cut it with a knife. Tsunade told the 2 Chunin to leave and wished them luck as she sent them on their way. Shikamaru rubbed the back of his head and said, man, this is going to be such a pain. He then left the room, but Naruko stayed a bit by the door. If you have to, do what needs to be done, Naruko, Tsunade said behind her fellow blonde's back. Naruko gave a soft nod and walked out of the room. The main gate to Konoha 2. Minutes later. Naruko and Shikamaru were waiting while Naruko sent a few of her Kage Bunshin to get as many people as they could. So far, they had Karen, Haku, Team Guy, and Choji. All they had to do was wait to see if Kiba was free. Karen and Haku were wearing new clothes because they found something that fit them better. Karen's hair was a little longer, so she could pull it back into a ponytail and let her bangs frame her face. She was wearing a blue t-shirt that showed off her midriff and had Uzumaki swirls on the shoulders. On top of that, she wore a lavender top with no sleeves that went down to her thighs and showed off her navel. A black band wrapped around the top just under her bust. She wore short black shorts, long black thigh-high stockings, black sandals, and matching black fingerless armlets that went up to her elbows and held wires for her alchemy. 1. Haku was wearing a blue turtleneck top with no sleeves that had a zipper up the front. The zipper at the top of her bust was open, showing some cleavage, and she had blue bands on her wrists. She wore black shinobi pants that stopped just above her knees and were held up by a black belt with a blue cloth on it. Her headband was stitched to the side of her waist, and a shuriken holster was tied around her left thigh with medical tape. She wore black shinobi sandals and black shin guards on her feet, too. Lastly, she wore her flank jacket, but she didn't zip it up. She also wore a medic pouch on her back and a tanto above it. Naruko opened her mouth and said, "My clone just told Kiba he's coming." A few minutes later, Kiba joined the team. The Inuzuka asked in shock, "Man, is this really happening?" He was shocked that Sasuke had turned traitor. "Yeah, it is," Shikamaru said. "Okay, listen up." Naruko shouted to get everyone's attention. "We're going to split into 2 teams, one on the ground and one in the air. Shikamaru will lead the ground team, and I'll lead the air team. Does that make sense?" she asked. Kiba asked, "How the heck are you going to be in the air?" As Akamaru barked and wondered the same thing. Karen rolled her eyes and used her alchemy to make a big wire bird. "That's how, dog boy," she said. Kiba was annoyed by Karen's name, but he let it go for the sake of the mission. Shikamaru knelt down, took a stick, and started drawing on the ground. "Okay, this is how we're going to move. Kiba and Akamaru will go in front because they can smell Sasuke's scent and check out the scent of the enemies to avoid booby traps. I'll be right behind him to give quick orders based on what happens. Following me will be Lee, who should be quick enough to help the front and back if." Naruko gave a low whistle and said, "Good idea, Shikamaru." Shikamaru looked at her and asked, "Thanks, but what's your plan?" He was interested in how she would handle this situation. Naruko put a hand on her hip and said, simple, with Karen-chan acting as our transportation in the air and being our radar, we'll have a steady fix on both you and the enemy. In fact, as soon as she got here, I had her send a Cage Bunshin to scout out from above so we have a good idea of where and how fast the enemy is moving. She looked at the rest of her team and said, with Ten-chan acting. Good, Shikamaru said with a nod. Having both the location of the enemy and a doctor would be a huge help for the mission. Naruko, yelled a woman, and everyone turned to see Sakura running toward them. She held her knees to catch her breath. Please take me with you. I tried to talk him out of it, but he wouldn't listen. Sakura said as she wiped some tears from her eyes and looked into Naruko's. I know I can reach him if I try harder. Please just let me come along. Shikamaru cut in, drawing Sakura's attention to himself. No way, he said. Sorry, Sakura, but the way you are now and the fact that you couldn't get him to stop this nonsense the first time, you'll just be a liability. Sakura was about to say no, but Naruko stopped her. Haruno, Uchiha made his choice. We have orders to bring him back, but that all depends on whether he comes with us willingly or not, she said with no emotion. Everyone looked shocked when they heard that. Kiba was surprised and asked, whoa, what the hell do you mean by that? Shikamaru sighed and said, it's simple. Sasuke willingly betrayed Konoha. Whether he was a Uchiha or not, that's still treason. No one is exempt from treason, especially if he's going to Orochimaru, an S-rank traitor from our own village, which drives the point home even more. Sakura grabbed Naruko's arm and cried, Naruko, please. I know you and Sasuke-kun aren't best friends, but please don't kill him. Please bring him back. She pleaded. Soon after, Sakura was on the ground, holding her now red right cheek, when she got a hard slap. Disgusting. The silence after the slap was broken by Naruko's voice. Naruko gave Sakura a disgusted look as she looked down at her. She said to Sakura, who looked shocked to even hear them, how can you even call yourself a kunoichi? All you do is fumble around about a boy who doesn't even give you the time of day, yet you continue to follow him like some deprived puppy. It is almost too sick for words. This is the real world, Haruno. If you can't handle it, turn in your headband. Your little fantasies don't exist here, Naruko said as she turned around and left. Karen walked up to Naruko. I just got the memory from my clone. We have a lot of ground to cover going north, she said as she made a big wire eagle. Naruko nodded. You got that, Shikamaru? She asked her co-leader, and he nodded back. Okay, everyone, let's go, the shadow user said as the ground team left and the air team took off. Sakura sat there on the cold dirt ground with her face covered as she cried her heart out because Sasuke might die. In the woods. The ground team kept going north, and the aerial kept up with them. Karen told Naruko, they stopped for some reason, and I think they just fought each other because I can feel a few signatures from other Konoha shinobi. The blonde asked, are the Konoha shinobi okay? Karen nodded and said, yeah, it looks like they're all alive and heading back to the village. One of them is Shizune-san. Naruko said to Shikamaru through the radio she wore around her neck, I see that the enemy has been weakened and that our friends are still alive and going home. That's good. Did you hear that? Shikamaru replied from his copy. From the blonde's point of view, this worked out pretty well. No one died, and hopefully the enemy was weakened enough that they could take them out quickly and finish the mission. They kept going for a while until Shikamaru sent a message. Naruko, we see them, and they look tired. We're making a plan, and we're going in. Shikamaru told Naruko, get ready to help us out. Roger that, said Naruko. Okay, girls, get ready to go at any moment. All the girls gave her a nod. A second later, you could hear the sounds of battle before it went quiet. The broken message from the radio said, Naruko, a barrier, our chakra, on ahead, catch up. Damn to hell, Naruko muttered. Karen, she told her. Right, the redhead nodded and focused. The other three in Uchiha are already on the move, but the last one is staying behind with the ground team. It looks like some kind of barrier is surrounding them and draining their chakra. Naruko said, okay, we're going to stop them. Shikamaru should be able to handle this. Go. Karen moved her wire eagle close to the enemy to catch up with them. Tenten said, I got this one, as she traced the lines of two perfect Chinese Dao swords. Naruko said as she looked at the swords, "I can tell you've been training hard." Tenten just grinned at her. "Let me help you out," Naruko said as she focused on a lot of chakra, took a deep breath, and made 3 hand signs. FTON. Shinkoku, wind release, vacuum sphere, she said, and the blonde let out a lot of wind bullets that cut up the enemy's path, stopping them from moving. Tenten dropped to the ground, strengthened her body, and slashed at the man with many weapons. The man said, "Damn," as he jumped back to avoid being hit. 2 of his other teammates were about to help him, but a new round of wind bullets stopped them. "Go ahead," the man said arrogantly. "I got this minor character." Tenten's eye twitched when she heard that. "Minor character? I'm more of a side character," she said as she moved her Dao swords into a stance. "Ha, Timon no Kitamaru of the East Gate, won't need much to beat a low-level character like you," the man said with a smirk. Metal Gear Rising. Revengeance original soundtrack, A Stranger I Remain. Tenten replied, "We'll just have to see about that." Karen turned to Naruko from the Wire Eagle and said, "The others are going now, and that big kid is fighting the other big guy." Naruko nodded and said, "Good, then Ten-chan will have help soon." "Let's leave, Ten-chan can handle this guy until help arrives." Karen did as she said. When Kitamaru saw that his opponent's friends were leaving, he laughed and said, "It looks like your friends are leaving you to die." Tenten snorted, "Not really, I can handle you," but she knew Naruko had left for a reason. Maybe Karen could feel the ground team? She thought that was the only reason Naruko would leave her, since her blonde friend was sure she could fight this guy long enough for the others to arrive. She took a deep breath and pumped chakra into her legs before springing into action. She went to slash at Kitamaru, but he jumped out of the way and spat out 6 globs of something that looked like gold. The globs turned into strange-looking throwing knives with hooks. "Let's see how you like 6 against 2, he said as he attacked the girl with the bun hair with quick slashes of his weapons. Tenten kept up with him, using the range of her longer weapons to keep him at bay. She tried to cut at his foot, but he jumped out of the way and his cheeks puffed up. "Kumo Ska, spider web flower," he shouted as he fired 4 spider web nets that were double-layered. Tenten put down her Dao swords and made some hand signs. Kaden. Shenka no Jutsu, fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique. She countered, and multiple fireballs hit the webs and burned them up. Kitamaru was upset that his sticky webs had been destroyed, so he threw 4 of his curved knives at Tenten. Tenten threw her Dao swords at the knives, which knocked them out of the air and sent them straight toward Kitamaru, who caught them. "Thanks for the new toys, kid," he said cheekily as Tenten pulled a shuriken from her pouch and threw it at him. Tenten then showed the hand signs for a jutsu she learned from Naruko. Shuriken Cage Bunshin no Jutsu Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique, she said as the one shuriken turned into one. Kitamaru muttered, "Shit," as he dodged the shuriken and blocked most of the attacks with his curved knives and the Dao swords. Then something happened. Tenten muttered, "Trace off," and the Dao swords disappeared, leaving Kitamaru to swing at nothing but air while his left arm was hit by 2 shuriken from the top and middle left. He shouted, "Ah!" and glared at Tenten. "You'll pay for that, girl," he yelled. Tenten just gave him a sly smile, which grew when she saw what he was doing. "Konoha Senpu!" was yelled, and someone hit Kitamaru in the side, sending him flying into a tree. At that moment, everyone on the ground team was there except for Choji. "Naruko-chan and the others went on ahead, go," said Tenten as she moved into a stance and traced a pair of katanas. Shikamaru made a choice right there in a split second. "Lee, Neji, help out your teammate. If you win, check on Choji and try to catch up if you can," he told Kiba as he moved forward. Lee and Neji nodded as they took their taijutsu stances on either side of Tenten. Lee yelled, "Let's show this old auto nin what team guy can do." Neji smiled and said, "Indeed," as he got ready to answer. She just smiled and said, "Might as well." Kitamaru looked at the 3 of them, grinned, and said, "Well, it looks like things just got a little more interesting." He said this as he got up from Lee's blow and took the shuriken out of his hands. Metal Gear Rising. Revengeance's original soundtrack, A Stranger I Remain. With the airborne team. The team kept looking for the last 2 members of the Sound 4. Naruko told the 3 kunoichi to drop as they fell from the Wire Eagle. Haku kicked the guy with 2 heads, which made him drop the barrel that Sasuke was in. Karen. Naruko said, and the redhead grabbed the barrel with her wires and brought it to her. Damn, the guy with lipstick said as he gave the three girls a dirty look. As Naruko drew Excalibur with invisible air on, Haku readied her spear and sent wind chakra down it. The man said, to Yuya. The redhead said, right, as she put her flute to her lips. Naruko was about to attack, but Yuya started to play, and the girls fell for the genjutsu because they couldn't stop listening to the music. Their bodies felt like they were tied down with strong rope, and it looked like their skin was melting away. Kyuubi. Naruko thought to herself. I know. The Biju replied, and he easily stopped the genjutsu. However, she had to find a way to cover up the sound or it would keep happening. Saken thought, heh heh heh, to Yuya's Mateki, Mugen Ansa, Demon Flute, Phantom Sound Chains, is a complete success, as he covered his ears with two other hands and went to get their mission objective. Before Naruko could move, she saw something coming. Gatsuga, Fang passing Fang, was yelled as two fast attacks that looked like drills came at Yuya. She avoided them by stopping her flute and then hit Saken, knocking him off the nearby cliff. Shikamaru said, damn Kiba, he better be okay. The plan was to just go after the one playing the flute, but it looks like Kiba saw an opportunity to hit at least one of them. When the sound stopped, the girls were able to move again. Naruko turned to Yuya and said, well, now it's 4 against 1. Yuya grumbled as the curse mark, which looked like 3 hooks, started to show up on her skin, but she blinked in surprise. What are you doing here? She asked, and the Konoha nin turned to see an albino man with shoulder-length white hair, bright green eyes, and 2 red dots on his forehead standing on the barrel that Sasuke was in. He kicked Karen, sending her into a tree. Karen. Naruko yelled as Haku went to check on the redhead. The redhead got up, wiped the blood from her mouth, and gave the white-haired man an angry look. The man looked at them, then turned to Yuya and said, Yuya, I want you to take care of this trash while I give Orochimaru-sama his new ship. Fearfully, Yuya nodded her head and said, yeah, got it, Kimimaro. She did this to show the other people that she was scared of him. And that did not look good. Damn, another one? Naruko asked. Karen-chan, hold her back, and Shikamaru, back her up. That guy is on a whole other level. Haku-chan and I will handle him. Karen and Shikamaru both nodded. Karen knew that Naruko was the strongest fighter on both the ground and air teams, so she would probably be their best bet against the newcomer. Kimimaro was being chased by the girl with blonde and black hair. Metal Gear Rising. Revengeance original soundtrack, The Stains of Time. Karen turned to Yuya, adjusted her glasses a little, and flexed her fingers to bring out her wires. So, Nara, how are we doing this? The redhead asked as she got into a ready position. Shikamaru also took a stand. Simple, we take her out and go help Naruko and Haku, he said, but that's probably easier said than done, since he could tell this girl was probably around Jonin level. Hello? Hello? Is this something that works?
I really need to fix this, a female voice in Karen's head said.
Karen blinked, Nimue? She asked. Oh, it does work, good. Karen, do you know that there is another Uzumaki close to you? Said the elemental. No freaking way, Karen blinked again. Are you telling me that this girl is another Uzumaki? Because if she is, I don't know what to do because she's about to fight us to the death right here. She yelled this in anger. Why did she have to drop such a bomb in the middle of a fight? Nimue said, well, there's no need to be rude to me, young lady. I just thought you might want to know. Karen sighed and said, sorry, I'll call you back later. No more fighting, please. As she cut the line, she said, okay, new plan. We'll take her alive. The redhead replied, okay. Shikamaru raised his eyebrow and asked, why? Karen wrote, simple, she's clan, an Uzumaki like me and Naruko, so I'd rather not kill my own family, thank you, which she said in a direct way. Shikamaru could only say, troublesome, because this made the situation even worse. Can't you, I don't know, talk to her? He asked in a neutral tone. Karen just gave him a blank look and then pointed to her fellow redhead and asked, does she look like she wants to talk? Get ready to die, brats, because this is my melody of death. She said as she made some hand gestures. Kachiyose no Jutsu, summoning technique. She shouted as she summoned 3 monsters that looked big. "Meet my Doki, rage ogres, fuckers," she said with a smile as she put her flute to her mouth and used her Mateki, Genbu's Kyoku, demon. Both Karen and Shikamaru said, "Crap," as they jumped off the tree branch they were standing on when one of the Doki used its club to break it. "Come on, brain boy, do what you're supposed to do," Karen yelled as she jumped out of the way of the bandaged and armless Doki who was going to body slam her. She fought back by making a big wired fist that knocked the thing into a tree. Shikamaru snapped back, "It's kind of hard to think of something when you yell at me, woman." "Oh, you didn't just go there," Karen snapped back. "Don't make me come over there and peel your dick like a banana with my wires, Shadow Boy," she threatened. Shikamaru shivered as he tried to avoid Doki's arm blade. "Whoa, these 4 eyes are getting downright cruel," Tayuya said, blinking. "That's a nice threat, I'll have to remember that, but killing is more important right now than a great one-liner." Karen made a gun-like motion with her thumb and index finger and fired 5 sickly blue and red balls at Tayuya. Tayuya looked surprised, but she kept playing her flute as she tried to avoid the curse spell. She did notice that as soon as they touched the tree, it looked like they broke the bark. Karen frowned when her Gander curse didn't hit its target. It looks like she'll have to use Genjutsu to get a hit, but since her Uzumaki cousin had just used Genjutsu, it was best to say that she could stop any Genjutsu that Karen could do at this point. Shikamaru moved out of the way again and said, "Damn, this is bad." "We're getting farther and farther away," he thought as Doki swung his club at him, but as soon as it hit him, the boy turned into smoke. "Listen up, Shadow Boy," Karen said as she used a Kage Bunshin and a Kawarimi move to save the boy. Shikamaru said, "Thanks for that, I owe you one." "Well, start paying me back now," Karen said, referring to her mystic eye of binding. "If I can get close to her and make good eye contact, I can paralyze her." Shikamaru asked quickly, "What else can you do besides that, those clones, and those wire structures?" "Genjutsu, too, but I'd probably only get one shot at it before she got more cautious if I failed the first time." "The only reason she can't see us is because I have a Genjutsu hiding us," Karen said, but that was a lie. It was really a boundary field to hide their presence, and Karen was also holding back her chakra in case the other Uzumaki was a sensor, so the worst thing that could happen was that the other read. Shikamaru said with a confident smile, "All right, then. Here's the plan. Metal Gear Rising. Revengeance original soundtrack, The Stains of Time." With Guy's team. Kitamaru was out of breath. He had already used the first stage of the curse seal and summoned Kyodaigumo, but it was cut down by a girl with a bun and flying swords. Even before that, when he used his summons Amagumo, Rain of Spiders, he could rain down smaller spiders from the eggs of his summons at his enemies. However, that Hyuga used his Hake Rokujian Shish, 8 trigrams 64 palms, to destroy the younger spiders while that bowl-cut kid destroyed them with his speed and power, and finally, the bun-haired girl burned all the thread. Hell, the only reason he was still moving was because of his Nenkan no Yoroi, armor of sticky gold, which gave him some protection from the attacks of the bowl-cut kids and the Jukin of the Hyuga. Things were pretty much going to be bad for him, but it was time to move on. So, he took off his headband to show his third eye, which opened and turned into the second stage of the curse seal. As his skin turned dark red, his face changed. He got horns on his forehead, shoulders, and elbows, and his hair got long and white. He also got spinnerets. "I'll kill you all in one shot," he yelled as he used his Kumo Nenkan, spider sticky gold, to make a big war bow. He held it in one hand, pulled the string with his mouth with the other, and used his other 4 hands to hold himself up with spider webs. He also used his feet to tighten the bow even more at the edges. He spat out a big gold arrow and aimed it at them. When the Chunin and 2 Genin saw him change, they stopped and went to move as he shot the arrow that tore most of the forest apart. Kitamaru said, "Kumo Senki, Suzaku, Spider War Bow, terrible split," as he made another arrow with a spiral tip. This time, he planned to use it to stab the girl with the bun hair for killing his summon. Tenten cursed that none of her projections could reach him quickly enough or be strong enough if they did. Play. Crow's Claw Broken Phantasm. If you can't beat it, you should think about what else can. When she first started learning how to use magic, Nimue told her those words. Only her imagination kept her from being all that she could be. She had to figure out how to hit her opponent. A bow. Her rival used one, so why shouldn't she? She picked up a branch that was lying on the ground and used reinforcement to make a bow out of it. But how could she fight? It had to be fast and strong, and it had to be able to tear through her opponent. Suddenly, her crest flashed, and in her mind she saw a picture. It was a sword with a spiral-shaped blade and silver, blue, and gold details. She was just about to say the name of it. She said, Kalidbalg. 2. The fake spiral sword, 3. She hit the anvil by picturing the hammer being lifted. How to trace in 7 steps. Judging the idea of creation. A blade that could cut through even the strongest defenses. Hypothesizing the basic structure. Spiraled to stay true even in the strongest wind. To copy the composition material. Made of metals that are as hard as diamonds and as stiff as stones. Imitating the skill that went into making it, it was hammered by masters and then bent by people. Taking into account what it went through as it grew up, a sword that learned to fly through the air. Reproducing the years that have passed, a weapon that broke many people's hearts. A blade that was made so well that it could cut through both heaven and hell. She thought Kalidbalg was an A-rank noble phantasm, but because of how she made it, projected weapons will always be of a C-rank quality because humans can't fully understand the existence of an object through only one sense. But there was another way. She put her prana into it, making it crack, grow stronger, and become more dangerous.
Making it a broken phantasm.
She had seen Naruko do it and asked her more about it. If there is a lot of prana in a noble phantasm, it can be made to explode after hitting its target. It is almost impossible to fix a broken noble phantasm, and since they are heroic spirits' best weapons, they are not likely to try. She was different because, thanks to tracing, she could make as many copies of noble phantasms as her prana would allow. This helped her make up for the fact that all of her projections were lowered by 2 ranks. So, her noble phantasm went from being a C rank to a B rank. She put the arrow in her bow with her right hand, pulled back, and aimed. Her eyes were strengthened, and she could see her goal. Kalidbalg. And just as her opponent shot his arrow, she let it go. When she did let it go, though, she was thrown back into a tree and her bow broke into 1,000 pieces because of the phantasm's raw power. The spiral sword screamed and howled through the air as it changed into a red and blue energy arrow with a spiraling cyclone behind it. It hit the gold spiral arrow, but it went through it like wet tissue paper, leaving a spiraling path behind it. Kitamaru was shot into the sky by the broken phantasm, and the sheer power of the sword turned him into nothing. The sword continued into the sky and burst into flames, covering the sky in fire. Crow's claw broken phantasm. The field was quiet until Lee started to cheer. That was great, Tenten. He told her as he ran up to her and gave her a youthful hug. Neji walked up to them and smiled. But Tenten felt like her whole body was on fire, and every nerve and blood vessel in her body felt like it was screaming. Tenten? Neji asked when he saw the hurt look on her face. I'm okay, she said with a cough. I just need to rest. That attack took a lot out of me, you know. The girl with the bun said, let's go back and help Choji if he needs it. The boys agreed, and Neji put her arm around his shoulder and started walking back to Konoha with Lee guarding the back. With Naruko and Haku. They ran after Kimimaro and entered an open field, where the albino stopped and put the barrel down. The man just kept staring at them, but he looked at Haku a little longer than he did at Naruko. He told Haku, I think I've seen you before. Haku's eyes widened, but she calmed down after a moment and smiled. Yes, we have. It was just a glance, but I see you found it, your purpose. Kimimaro nodded and said, yes, I have. As bones grew from his hands, shoulders, elbows, and knees, he said, get ready for the first dance, Yanagi no Mai, Dance of the Willow. Haku spun her spear, and Naruko got her sword ready. Naruko asked her servant, so, do you mind telling me how you know each other? Haku looked at her mistress and said, yes, Naruko-sama, when Zabuza-sama and I left Mizu no Kuni, we crossed paths. I wanted to reach out to him because his eyes reminded me of my own before I met Zabuza-sama, but Zabuza-sama wouldn't slow down, so I followed him while not getting a chance to talk to our opponent here. Naruko nodded, I see. The blonde said. The battlefield was quiet for a moment, and then both sides charged at each other. With Tayuya. Mahoutsukai no Yuru original soundtrack, duel 1-on-1. Where the hell are those losers? Tayuya muttered when she couldn't even find them. Screw it. Let's see how those pieces of trash handle this, she said as she decided to play Mateki, Mugen Onsa again. As she was about to play, a kunai came at her head, but she dodged it and played her flute, sending her doki to where the kunai came from. She didn't expect to see those weird blue and red orbs coming at her from different directions, so she continued to avoid them. "Ah!" Tayuya yelled as one of the orbs hit her on the head. She gritted her teeth and said, "Fucking hell," as she carefully put her weight on the tree branch she was standing on. She winced when she did this because the branch was broken. She asked, "How the hell did it hit?" As she felt something. "No way, Kai," she said as she stopped her chakra flow and realized she was somewhere else. Megan. Kokoni Arizu no Jutsu, demonic illusion, false surroundings technique, huh? Kept me distracted so you could hit me. A nice job for little scurrying rats, but I've seen better, the redhead said as she tried to move but felt stuck. "What the?" she asked as her surroundings changed again. So it was Megan. Niju Kokoni Arizu no Jutsu, demonic illusion, double false surroundings technique. Tayuya thought this when she saw the shadow holding her down. The double-layered genjutsu had made her think that the attackers were far away, but they were actually right next to her. When she looked, she saw that kid with the pineapple hair holding her down. Shikamaru said, "Kagemane no jutsu, shadow imitation technique, works. You think this can hold me?" Tayuya asked as her skin started to turn brown and horns grew out of her head. She tore off her beanie cap and started to fight against the hold. "Crap. Kage Kubashibari no jutsu, shadow neck binding technique," Shikamaru said as he made 3 quick hand signs. Shadow hands began to circle around Tayuya's body to hold her, but Shikamaru was having a hard time because of Tayuya's increased strength. All of a sudden, a big wire hand also grabbed Tayuya. When Karen walked up to her and grabbed her by the hair, Tayuya yelled, "Damn you." "Sorry, not happening cousin." Karen said. She looked into her brown eyes and channeled prana into her red ones. In that second, Tayuya felt her entire body freeze, as though she had been paralyzed from the soles of her feet to tips of her hair. Karen told Shikamaru to let go, and the shadow boy did as he was told. Karen pulled her reinforced fist back and hit Tayuya's head hard, knocking him out. The doki went away, and Tayuya's face went back to normal. Mahoutsukai no Yuru ending soundtrack, duel 1-on-1. A happy woman's voice said, "Well, it looks like my help wasn't needed after all," and the Konoha nin turned to see Sabaku no Tamari standing on a tree branch. She was wearing a different outfit than she had for the exam. It had a long-sleeved purple blouse under a gray top, a dark blue skirt, a long red sash tied in a bow, and an iron fan hanging from her back. "But I'd expect that from someone related to Naruko," Tamari said to Karen with a smile. After all, she did beat Gaara, which the blonde girl thought was impossible. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow and asked, "What am I, liver chop?" Tamari gave a half-serious, half-joking shrug and said, "Every great woman needs a stepping stool, or in this case, a stepping man." Shikamaru's sweat dropped, and he muttered, "Troublesome woman." Karen finished holding Tayuya down and wiped her brow. "Hey, let's get her back to Konoha, but can someone carry her?" "I'm kind of done here," the redhead said. During the fight, she had used about 7 more Kage Bunshin, which was tiring. Tamari shrugged. "Yeah, sure. I was supposed to help, but it was done when I got here, so I'll do it," she said as she jumped down and picked up the auto nin. "So what are you going to do to her? Question her?" she asked, as she still had some problems with auto. "Yes, but she's also an Uzumaki, so we'll probably be able to get her to come with us and bring her home," Karen said. As Shikamaru walked up to them, Tamari looked surprised and said, "I see. So, what are you doing here? I know you said you were coming to help, but is the rest of your team with you?" he asked. Tamari nodded.
Yes, Gaara went ahead to help Naruko, and Kankuro went after that dog boy.
Shikamaru breathed a sigh of relief and said, "At least Kiba's getting some help." He was worried about the Inuzuka, but it looks like he's in good hands now. "Come on, let's get back to Konoha and help others. It's the best we can do, since Naruko and Haku have so little chakra and that Gaara is with them, which is more than enough to tip the scales in their favor." The girls agreed and then turned around to go back. With Naruko and Haku, wind scars, ice, water, and pieces of bone were all over the ground. Kimimaro didn't have a shirt on. His second dance, Tsubaki no Mai, Dance of the Camellia, gave him 2 short bone-hilted swords, and his third dance, Karamatsu no Mai, made several bones stick out of him, Dance of the Larch. He was breathing hard, but he didn't let up on his job to keep Sasuke's barrel safe. Haku had a few cuts, but as Naruko stood in front of her and charged again, she was healing them. Kimimaro fired his Teshi Senden, 10-finger drilling bullets, at the blonde, but Naruko hit them away and went for an overhead slash. Kimimaro's bones shot out and caught the invisible blade, but with one prana burst, it was easy to get the sword free. The albino jumped back to avoid the horizontal slash that Naruko turned on a dime to do. He rolled to the side to avoid Haku's spear, which came from behind him through an ice mirror. Kimimaro said as he pulled out his short swords, to think I thought you two were trash, but to bring me to my third dance, I guess there are a few good ninja in Konoha. Naruko said with a hint, a very big hint, of sarcasm, I'll take that as a compliment. Sasuke's barrel exploded all of a sudden, and when he stood up, he had long white hair instead of his usual short black hair. Kimimaro told Sasuke, Uchiha, go north and you'll find Orochimaru-sama. I'll stay here and stop them, and Sasuke and the other Uchiha ran quickly. Naruko was annoyed and gave a tisk before going after Sasuke. Kimimaro went to stop her, but Haku put an ice mirror in front of him and made a wall of ice to stop him. Haku pointed her spear at the bone user and said with narrowed eyes, you'll have to go through me. In response, Kimimaro narrowed his eyes and got into his position. With Naruko. Naruko was chasing after Sasuke when she realized they were getting close to the Valley of the End. What a funny coincidence. Sasuke landed on the fingers of Uchiha Madara, and Naruko landed on the fingers of Senju Hashirama. Uchiha, I'm going to give you one chance. If you come back willingly, your sentence might not be as harsh, Naruko said as she started to talk. Sasuke laughed madly and said, yeah, right, why would I go back to that weak little village? All it does is hold me back. He yelled at the girl and pointed at her, and you always get in my way, that power of yours, you don't deserve it. It should all be mine. Naruko looked at him and shook her head. It's sad that you're so crazy at 12, she said with a shrug. But I never really liked you, so if you die here, it doesn't bother me much. As long as Orochimaru doesn't get the Sharingan, you're just a waste of space. It was good that she did it, because it made Sasuke even more angry. You think you can kill me? He asked. Well, I'd like to see you try. He said as he got into a fighting stance. With her invisible sword, Naruko did the same thing. The blonde asked with a smirk, well, then, let's just see, shall we? So, the old rivalry between the Senju and the Uchiha broke out again. Haku twirled her spear, and at the speed she was going, it made a light hum. She narrowed her eyes as she thought about this annoying opponent who was covered in black marks from some kind of curse seal. If she couldn't beat him normally because his bones were like steel armor, it might be best to put him in a box and suffocate him. Yes, I think that's enough. Now all that was left was a way to catch the bone user, who was surprisingly fast. Play Metal Gear. Rise of Revengeance. The only thing I know for sure. Haku ran at Kimimaro and tried to stab her with her spear with one last spin. But the bone man turned around it, and bones shot out of his chest to stab the girl, which they did. Haku's ice started to break apart, and he fell apart into a pile of ice. The albino asked, what? As he was cut on the back and kicked away. He stood up and turned to see Haku. Kori Bunshin no Jutsu, ice clone technique, was all she heard as she held out her hand. I've only had a little practice with this on live targets, so please bear with me. She asked with her usual smile as a light blue circle covered her palm. Aisu Maiku. She said, muttering her spell's one-line aria, Ransu, Ice Make, 1. After that one. Ice spears came out of her hand and hit the Auto Nin, sending him flying back. Haku took a deep breath to calm herself down. That does hurt a bit, but that's because my circuits aren't natural. It's a good thing I used something small, so it didn't use up too much of my limited odd. But I think I'm going to need it. She said as she got ready, because the Auto Nin got up again, but he had lost a lot of flesh and looked like a weird skeleton moving on. That's a good attack, but I'm not done yet. He shouted as he reached for the top of his spine and began to pull it out. Tesenka no Mai, Sururu. He called out as he whipped it around and extended it towards Haku. She moved out of the way and slammed her hand on the ground. Uzumaki Naruko. She shouted as the ground around them in the clearing turned into a big sheet of ice. Haku used the ice to sled and glide around the bone whip and hit it every so often. Kimimaro growled as he almost lost his balance and made bone spikes from the bottoms of his feet to keep him from falling. This made him a little slower, though. He slashed again, caught Haku's foot, pulled hard, and said, "You're mine." Tessenka no Mai. Hana, Dance of the Clematis, Flower. His free arm turned into a long, twisted bone lance, and he launched it at Haku. Haku made an ice dome, but Kimimaro broke through it easily as it fell apart, and then Haku himself fell apart. "Sorry, we could have been friends, maybe in the next life," she said from behind him as Haku slammed her hands into the ground and she came out of an ice mirror. Uzumaki Gunganiru, Ice Make, Gingnur. Kimimaro was wrapped in ice, which turned into a spear tip the size of a boulder as it shot into the air with a 4-meter-tall spear in temperatures below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. "No!" He yelled as he made bones come out of his body to save him, but the ice kept covering him. But he didn't give up. "Stay down!" Haku yelled, which was not like her, and she added more odd to the spell. Kimimaro kept slashing at what he could, and he was almost free, but the attack got stronger and covered him faster. He's being locked up, hopefully for good. He tried to move, but the cold was so strong that even his bones could only get him so far before his body gave out. He slowly stopped trying so hard. "Orochimaru-sama, please forgive me," Kimimaro thought as his already sick body gave out to the cold in his last moments. Small snowflakes were falling from the sky as Haku waited a few moments to see if he would move from the spear's tip. He didn't, and she fell to the ground, exhausted from odd. "The only thing I know for sure is that Metal Gear, Rise of Revengeance is over." "It looks like you didn't need my help," said a monotone voice. Haku jumped up and grabbed her spear, getting ready for battle. She tensed up for a moment when she saw who it was, but then she let go. Gaara was the one who was there. He was wearing a red long-sleeved shirt with a fishnet shirt underneath it and red pants to match. He also wore black shinobi sandals and a white shale wrapped around his body. His gourd of sand was in a leather satchel. Haku said, "It looks like Tsunade-sensei sent Suna to ask for help," and the redhead nodded. Gaara looked at the huge spear and said, "Wow, that's impressive. So this is the power of the well-known Yuki clan." Haku didn't say anything because it would take a long time and a lot of chakra for her to be able to do this. He let it go, though, because it would be best not to say that magic or magecraft existed.
Haku got a little weak in the knees after spending so much odd all at once, and he fell.
Some clumps of sand caught him, though. She tensed up for a moment, then calmed down. "Thank you," she said as she stood up on her own and walked to the big spear. Gaara shook his head and said softly, "This is the least I can do for not being there sooner to help and for your mistress's help, too." Haku's eyes widened in surprise, but she smiled and gave her usual nod. It looks like her mistress has helped another person change for the better. She touched the enemy's spear and broke it, causing the enemy's body to fall to the ground. She sealed it up because an autopsy might find it useful in some way. So glad she used to be a hunter nin. She asked with her head tilted, "Should we go back to the others?"
"There are probably hurt people, and as the medic for this mission, it's my job to take care of them."
Gaara didn't know what to say. What about Uzumaki Naruko? Doesn't she need help, too? He asked with a bit of worry in his voice. Haku pushed him away and said, "No. If I know Naruko-sama, she'll want to deal with the Uchiha on her own. She's just stubborn like that." She sighed and said, "Let's go back." Then she started running back. Gaara looked in the direction Naruko had gone, gave her a nod, and then followed Haku. With Naruko and Sasuke. Both people just stood there and stared at each other, waiting for the other to act first. Her sword is going to be the hardest part of fighting her, so close combat is almost impossible. Even so, she is very good at ninjutsu, so being far away is just as bad. "Damned if I do and damned if I don't," Sasuke thought with a low growl as he reached for his shuriken pouch. "Ha!" Sasuke yelled as he threw shuriken and kunai at Naruko, who looked completely calm. In an instant, Naruko cut them up like they were pieces of paper. Tisk. Sasuke grunted and gritted his teeth. He jumped backwards and did a backflip to get some distance. In the middle of the backflip, he made some hand signs and took a deep breath. Kaden. Jikaki no Jutsu, great fireball technique. He breathed out as he landed and threw a large fireball at Naruko, who dropped her sword in. Water release. Water encampment wall, Suijinheki. And she spit out a wall of water, which was so big that it easily put out the fireball. Just as the jutsu stopped working, Naruko took one step forward, cracked the ground where she stood, and drop-kicked Sasuke. But he could see it with his Sharingan, so he jumped out of the way and went to the water below. When Naruko's kick hit the ground, it made a good-sized crater and set off sparks of prana from her legs. She took deep breaths in and out as her eyes glowed with raw power. She could feel her whole body getting stronger as it crackled with power and blew around her like wind. Senpai was right, reinforcement out, full body prana burst reinforcement in, she thought as she looked at her hands and then at Sasuke getting a foothold on the surface of the water. Well, can't keep him waiting for long or he might run away. Again. With that, she jumped down and used futon, kasui, wind release, stream, to land safely. Uchiha. Did you know that Uchiha Itachi was ordered to kill his own clan? Naruko asked him as she looked into his eyes, since Kyuubi would stop any genjutsu that Sasuke's level could do. Sasuke's eyes got big and he said, "What?" in surprise. At that moment, Naruko punched him in the ribs, breaking one. Gah! Sasuke yelled in pain as he rolled across the water. When he got up, he looked at Naruko and yelled, "Liar." Naruko just smirked and said, "No, Uchiha Itachi is Konoha's greatest hero because he stopped the Uchiha coup d'etat by killing everyone but you." She smiled at Sasuke, who was trying to figure out what was going on. Danzo was a very interesting person. Flashback. Naruko was walking to the front gate when she felt something and stopped. As soon as she did, a man stepped forward wearing a white cloak and a blank Anbu mask. "Yes?" Naruko asked with an eyebrow raised, but she was ready to fight back if she had to. He didn't say anything but gave Naruko a scroll. She looked at it suspiciously but took it. She slowly opened it, never taking her eyes off the Anbu. She looked at it until her eyes got big, at which point she turned her full attention to the scroll. "No way," she said, gasping for air and swallowing hard as she heard what it said. She read the last part of the scroll and thought about what she thought. Yes, this could be done, and it would be. It was always important to have friends in powerful positions, and the futon jutsu seemed like a good way to get them. Naruko said, "Yes, I'd love to have tea when I get back." "Thank you," as she gave the scroll back to the Anbu, who then disappeared into the shadows. Uchiha Itachi. You really deserve the name Shinobi more than anyone else. To sacrifice so much. She wondered if she would ever be able to make a choice like that. End of flashback. Sasuke was shaking with anger, but he didn't know who was to blame because he was so angry. He glared at Naruko, and black marks on his body looked like flames. Kings and Queens by 3 Seconds to Mars by Seconds to Mars. Naruko smiled at him in that way that made you want to kill her. The blonde ran at him and tried to punch him, but he moved out of the way and went for a low kick instead. Naruko jumped and tried to kick Sasuke in the face, but he blocked it. His arm hurt and he was pushed back a few meters by the force of the kick. Sasuke yelled, "Naruko!" as he ran at her and made hand signs. Kaden. Jikaki no Jutsu, great fireball technique. He said as he fired the Kaden Jutsu with more power. Naruko also made hand signs, but what happened next was a surprise. She shouted, "Kaden, Jikaki no Jutsu, great fireball technique," and threw a bigger fireball than his, which hit him and made him dive into the water for safety. "Didn't think I'd pick up a few of those, did you, Uchiha?" she asked. He then threw some shuriken at her from under the water to catch her off guard, but Naruko just dodged them and did a few hand signs, Raiden, Jabashi, lightning release, electromagnetic murder, and then pointed the jutsu at the water. Gra. Sasuke gasped as he came up to the surface of the water and stood up. When he did, he got kicked in the face, which sent him flying into a nearby rock wall. As he did more hand signs, Sasuke's eyes went crazy, and he felt overwhelmed by the chakra he was getting from the curse seal. Kaden. Ryuka no Jutsu, fire release, dragon fire technique. He shouted as he shot a big fire dragon at his opponent. Naruko could do this almost all day because she has a lot of chakra. Sasuke, on the other hand, would be too tired to keep doing this, but she could stop this jutsu with Suiten, Daibakufu no Jutsu Great Waterfall Technique. Then, a big wave of water rose up in front of her, spun around, and fired at the Fire Dragon Jutsu, which she thought was weak, putting it out with ease. Why was Sasuke panting? He thought this seal would give him power. What happened? Why? Why did she always have more power? Sasuke yelled in anger as his skin turned gray, his hair grew and turned white, and 2 pairs of wings in the shape of hands grew out of his back. He got a mark on his nose that looked like a cross, and his lips turned black. He started to laugh quietly, and then he burst out laughing. Yes, this is it. All this power, all of it. With it, he said, looking at Naruko with an even crazier expression. I will kill you. He yelled as his wings started to flap and he took off. Naruko took a deep breath and called up her sword. Its air barrier broke, revealing the full power of the sword of promised victory. As Sasuke stayed in the air, he was almost trying to make fun of Naruko by showing that he could fly and she couldn't. He did this to soothe his already hurt ego. Naruko laughed at Sasuke as she charged her light particles and turned them into light wings. She then flew away. She was already on top of him, so she hit him with her shoulder, cut him in the stomach, making a good gash, and then gave him a flip kick that sent Sasuke into the water. He quickly got back on his feet, but all he could do was look at Naruko like he was about to break. His mind couldn't figure out why he kept losing. No, his training with that useless Kakashi should help him, he thought as he made the hand signs for Kaden, Karyu Enden, Fire Release, Fire Dragon Flame Bullet. He sent out a fire dragon that roared with anger and flew at its target like a missile to kill it. And yet again. Countered. Water Release. Water Dragon Bullet technique is called Suiten, Suiryuden no Jutsu. The water in the air came together and made a copy of the fire dragon out of water. They ran into each other and stopped each other from going out and disappearing. It was almost funny. They were there. A beautiful angel with gold wings. A devil with wings like bats that make you sick. A water creature. A fire-based being. One who is full of happiness. One who is full of hate. One lucky. One swore. A hero. A villain. A senju. A uchiha. Heaven. Hell. The sun. The shadows. What would happen? Sasuke glared at her and yelled, Uzumaki. As he ran at her with his wings flapping. Naruko narrowed her eyes and ran after him. Uchiha. She yelled as she came down on him. Sasuke held out his hand, ready to stab her in the heart. Naruko flipped over on her way down and kicked Sasuke right in the face, breaking his nose. Naruko flipped off his face and landed on the side of the rock wall near them. As Sasuke's body hit the hard ground below, the blonde jumped into the air from her higher position, angled her sword straight down, and came down as the guillotine for the Uchiha. As she went down, she sometimes said bad things about her origin. It was powerful, just like her will. It was worn down like her body, which had been through a lot. It was hard to fight against, because it only made her want her real goal more. Sasuke was hit right in the heart by her sword. Sasuke let out a silent scream as he looked at the sword going through him. He couldn't speak. For her origin was the shield Aegis, which meant protection. She would use this symbol of protection to protect her home, her kingdom, and her ideal. Even from the most insignificant things. As the raindrops started to fall, Naruko gave the sword of promised victory a sharp twist, and the red fluid in Sasuke started to pool under him. The only thing the Uchiha could do was look at his killer with his Sharingan, since he couldn't speak other than the copper liquid that came out of his mouth when he changed back to his normal form. As the light in his eyes went out, Naruko walked over to him and closed his eyes and folded his hands as a small sign of respect for the dead. She stood back up and looked at the boy's body. May you find peace for your hatred in the afterlife, Uchiha Sasuke. No one needs it more than you, Naruko said in a sincere voice, feeling sorry for the boy. Kings and Queens by 3 Seconds to Mars by Seconds to Mars. She cut off his head quickly, put it in a sealed bag, and put an explosive tag between his folded hands. She walked away as the rain got heavier. When the explosion happened, she didn't flinch and kept going strong. Only the sky, the rain, Kyuubi, and now Kakashi and his dog were with her. Joy. Hello Kakashi. Naruko said in a neutral tone. See what I've become by the way is a play. Kakashi just stared at the spot where Sasuke was. I see. I guess I was too late, he muttered before turning to Naruko and saying, I guess this was a mission accomplished. Naruko walked slowly past Kakashi. It seems that Uchiha's use of Orochimaru's drug killed him while I was trying to catch him, she said with a shrug. He asked in a soft voice, may I ask why? Uchiha Sasuke was trash for leaving Konoha, plain and simple. This will be the official report, Naruko said as she looked forward. Is that a problem? She asked Kakashi with a cold look in her eyes. No, Hokage-sama, he said in a low voice, but a second later he looked shocked. He didn't understand why, but he did understand why. He had seen those eyes before. They were her father's eyes, the eyes of a Hokage. Hey, Naruko, you really are full of surprises, just like your father, the Jonin thought as they walked home through the hard rain. See what I've become at the end, by the way. Konoha. They went into the village quietly, and Kakashi told the people at the gate that he would talk to them while she went straight to the Hokage tower. People laughed silently at her, thinking she couldn't retrieve the confused, once last, Uchiha, but she didn't care about those idiots who didn't know anything. When she walked into the office, she was told that Tsunade was in the hospital. Shikamaru and Temari were in the waiting room when she walked in. Naruko asked, who? To get Shikamaru to look at her. He looked a little tense, but he shook it off. Choji. He was in a bit of danger, but Haku-san and Karen-san got to him and did some field medical on him, so the damage wasn't as bad as it could have been if they hadn't, he said as his face hardened. What about Uchiha? Naruko just looked at him, and he knew what she meant. Shikamaru shook his head and said, Tisk, damn idiot. You're nothing but a crazy idiot. So Uchiha is out of the picture? Temari asked, putting her hand on her hip and looking at the other blonde. The other blonde nodded and said, good riddance. Tsunade then walked out of the room while Karen and Haku stood on either side of her. Well, you two, hurry back to my office, said the busy woman to the mission leaders. They both agreed and went to her office. Tsunade sat down in her chair and crossed her fingers as she looked at them. Report, she said, and the two stood up straight. When we went to get Uchiha Sasuke, we ran into the Sound 4. Choji stayed behind to fight the biggest member of the group. Team Guy fought the spider member. Kiba threw the weird two-faced one off a cliff. Karen-san and I fought the only female member, who turned out to be an Uzumaki, so we captured her. Naruko? Shikamaru asked as he looked at his co-leader. Naruko nodded. Haku-chan and I confronted a member of the Kagaya clan, and she killed him after I chased Uchiha Sasuke, who ran away during the fight. I told him to come back, and if he didn't, I'd kill him. He turned into this disgusting thing, probably Orochimaru's work, and during our fight, he fell over and started coughing up blood like a fountain, so he. Tsunade nodded and said, good work, you two. Even though the loss of the Uchiha clan is heavy, it was well worth it to stop Orochimaru from getting the Sharingan. She sighed and said, well, head home for some R&R, you two. I'll take care of the backlash that's going to happen. She then stood up to call a meeting of the council to talk about what had happened. Later that day, Uchiha Sasuke was labeled a traitor to Konoha and died from an experimental drug given to him by Orochimaru. He died before a team could be made to get him back. He died right before Uzumaki Naruko was about to forcefully bring him back, but the drug made his already broken mind from the massacre of his clan even worse, so he attacked anyone who came close. Inuzuka Kiba and Akamichi Choji were the only ones hurt on the mission. They were in critical condition for a while, but field medical aid saved them before they were taken back to the village. Some people wanted to blame the Uzumaki heiress, but Tsunade stopped them by saying that even if Uchiha Sasuke had lived, she would have killed him for betraying the village and nothing would have stopped her. Since there were no more Uchiha in the village, the Uchiha district was torn down and all the valuables were taken to help the village's economy. All the jutsu were taken to the library so that other people could use them. No one knew yet what the area would be used for. The latest Uzumaki is being held in the T&I department. While sitting in a cell, Tayuya sang, bored, 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 bored. The door to the cell opened all of a sudden and Tsunade and Jiraiya came in. Hey jiggle tits, sup? Tayuya said all casual like. At that, Tsunade's eye twitched, and Jiraiya laughed in a sly way. Getting smacked on the back of the head for it. Yes, hello to you, too, Tayuya, Tsunade said with a forced smile. Now, follow us to the interrogation room, or I can drag you there by your tits, if you like, she said in a tone that was sickeningly sweet. Tayuya took a deep breath and said, yes, ma'am, before following the blonde woman and snow-haired man. They walked into the room where questions were asked. Tayuya sat down in a chair, and the two loyal Sanins sat on the other side of her. Well, the blood sample we took from you shows that you are an Uzumaki, Tsunade said, making the redhead raise an eyebrow. That means you have family here who want you to join them. Well, good for me, Tayuya said in a sarcastic tone. But I think, you know, helping kill your sensei might be a little bit of a problem here. She said this with a deadpan face. True. Jiraiya nodded. But technically, you were following orders, just like the rest of us. So, if you say, voluntarily join Konoha and give us all the information you have on Orochimaru, we can do a prohibition period on you. We get a seal on that thing on your neck and do some tests, and we may just have a solution to that problem. So how about it, Red? Deal? He asked, leaning back on the table. Tayuya thought about the different points of view. It was pretty clear what to do. Spend the rest of her life in a small cell. Live with real family and work with people who won't just stick it to your face and stab you in the back for no reason. The second choice is a winner. So do I get dental or what? Sakura sat on the grass of Training Ground 7 and cried. Hey, where everything began, but also where things started to go wrong. It was almost funny that she was trying to achieve a stupid dream. Did this make sense? Hey, she was finally thinking about everything that had happened. She tried to get close to a boy she thought she loved. She couldn't even get close to him. What a fool she was, Cammy, she just buried her face in her knees. She hadn't changed at all, in fact. Oh, so here you were, Sakura, Kakashi's voice said. Sakura looked up, wiped her tears, and saw the Jonin walking onto the training ground. Hey, Kakashi-sensei. She said weakly. Kakashi just looked at her and said in a sad voice, you really shouldn't call me sensei. I wasn't much of one, after all. He then turned to the memorial stone. Sakura blinked, no you are a. But Kakashi cut her off. No, I wasn't, he said and ran his hand through his hair. It could have turned out better if I had tried harder to help Sasuke or maybe help you three work out your differences or trained you enough so Naruto wouldn't have left. Sakura looked down and said in a sad voice, I guess we're the only ones left from Team 7 then. Kakashi put his hands in his pockets and said, it seems that way. The genin said. You still have me. Kakashi turned his head towards her as she stood up and said, I said you still had me, so how about we start over? Sakura asked, putting out her hand. Hi, I'm Haruno Sakura. Who are you? Kakashi looked at her confusedly, then gave a small laugh and took her hand. Hatake Kakashi, it looks like we'll be a team from now on, he said playfully. But fair warning, I can be a little late sometimes. Well, I can be a pain at first, but I'll do my best. Sakura said with a smile. Naruko was waiting in a tea house. She was sitting in a booth by herself and reading a scroll. Someone sat in her booth a few minutes later and put a scroll of the same color next to hers on the outside of it. He asked for some tea and took a sip of it. Nice work, he said, but who knew if he was talking about the tea or her? Yes, it is Danzo-san, Naruko said as she took her last sip of tea. I'm sorry, but I have to go. Enjoy yourself, Danzo-san, she said as she stood up, took the scroll on the farthest edge, and left in a heartbeat. Danzo picked up the scroll from the table and put it in his sleeve as a smile spread across his face. Yes, that girl was worth keeping an eye on. He was glad that she helped him. It showed what kind of person she was, and it was far from not doing what had to be done. Good. It was something Konoha really needed. Naruko walked to the lake and looked at it. This was where it all began. Everything. It looked like her journey was just getting started, which made her smile. Oh, you're leaving for a while? Nimue asked with a big smirk on her face as she got out of the water. Yes, Jiraiya-sensei wants to take me around the world and train me as we go, Naruko said. Nimue hummed, but she pouted at her and said, but I'll miss my little Naruko. She then gave the girl a hug, which made the girl blush a little. Naruko said in a small voice, "Well, I have to if I want to learn." A small part of her didn't want to go. "Well, I think Naru-chan should go. She'll need it if she wants to beat me," Tenten said as she walked to the lake. "I just knew you'd be here," she said with a smile and her arms crossed behind her head. "Yes, please go. I could use some peace and quiet without you getting angry at the drop of a hat," Karen said as she followed her. "I'll support whatever Naruko-sama chooses," Haku said as she walked towards the group of girls who were now gathering. Nemu playfully pinched the blonde's cheek and said, "Ah, that's so cute, Naruko. All your little friends are here for you." Naruko smacked the hand away in a playful way and turned her head to the side. "Well, they didn't have to," she said as she crossed her arms and turned her head to the side. They all said, "Tsunere," with a straight face. Naruko got red and stomped her foot as she turned towards them. "I am not a Tsunere. After 2 days. Play cage the elephants, ain't no rest for the wicked." She finished packing all the things she needed, like clothes and tools. Naruko walked down the main street to the front gate with a bag slung over her shoulder and a royal blue cloak with white trim. She walked slowly as she took one last look at the stores and people on the street, since she wouldn't be back for 3 years. She'd already said goodbye to her family, friends, and other people she knew. She looked ahead and saw that her family and friends were waiting at the gate. She gave them a sad smile because she was going to miss them. Jiraiya was leaning against the right gate with his arms crossed and grinning at her. He told her it was time to leave by tilting his head. As she said sweet goodbyes to her family and friends one last time, she stood next to Jiraiya. "Come on, sensei, we should finish this up." Jiraiya laughed at how she always said one thing when she meant something else. Tsuneres. Difficult people. Even more so the women. Yeah, Gaki," he said as he pushed the gate open and they started walking. "So what's the big hurry?" he teased with a cheesy grin. She shot back, "No rest for the wicked." As they walked, Jiraiya laughed and said, "Sure, Gaki." "Sure." Jiraiya asked a question when they were about 5 minutes from the gate. "Oh, and by the way, Gaki, why didn't you close your bag?" After that, they were so quiet that a cricket could be heard in the distance. You're a sigh.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.